Hello and welcome to the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins Podcast. I am your host, Matt Infante, joined as always by Adam H. Beasley. And Adam, the Dolphins are in sole possession of first place in the AFC East after 7 weeks for the first time in over 2 decades. They're getting back arguably the best cornerback in the NFL, make his season debut within the next 2 weeks. It's all rainbows and sunshine in Miami. Ain't that right?
Listen, nothing but positivity on this podcast. The old Men in Black mind eraser. Week 7 didn't even happen. You know, they entered week 7 number 1 in every major offensive category. They leave week 7 number 1 in every major offensive category. First place, a full game clear of the Bills. The Bills are in deep, deep trouble. Hey, nothing but positivity on this podcast.
That's right. And you know, that's one way to frame it, right? Of course, the other way to frame it is the Dolphins faced their second test of the year and came up short again. The national narrative here is that, well, they got blown out. They're frauds, all of that. They haven't beaten anybody good. The two teams they played that were good, they lost. What say you, Adam?
It's amazing. Things can be accurate, but also wrong. And I think we're kind of falling into an easy trap. And I have a great deal of respect for a lot of my colleagues, but they have pointed out numerous times that the Dolphins really haven't done much of anything under Mike McDaniel. They lose to the good teams. They beat the bad teams. The offense does not travel, does not play well against against good defenses. And, they're 14-11 with Mike McDaniel as their coach. Hey, if Adam Gase had that same record, we would be running him out of town on a rail. Context is needed a little bit here. Okay, let's pump our brakes. First of all, 9-8 last year was largely because their quarterback couldn't stay healthy, and they're 5-2 this year. And yes, the teams that they've beaten, not great, but they also scored more against the New York Giants than any team has so far this year. By the way, New York Giants team that just flummoxed the Buffalo Bills a couple of weeks ago and, should have won that game. The Bills should be under 500. Let's be honest about that. So I think you need to see the shades of gray here. And certainly when you have a performance like they did on Sunday, actually to me, Sunday is the ultimate Rorschach test, because if you went into that game with the notion, with the narrative, with the firm belief that this is maybe a top 12, top 10 team, but certainly not a top 2 or 3 team, you got all the ammunition needed to make your point. Tua threw a pick at the end zone at a terrible time. Offensive line fell apart. Defense gave up 31 points, couldn't get the stops they needed. Dolphins wilted under the spotlight, and the crowd noise got to them. Those pre-snap penalties that were a huge bugaboo in 2022. They're back with a vengeance. Sure, if you want to make that argument, if you want to not see the huge, remarkable growth this team has made in the last month and a half, 2 months, of how they are a better team because, they are still -3 in turnovers and yet 5-2 on the season, still number 1 in every major statistical category. The 2 games they've lost at Buffalo, where they always lose, at Philadelphia, which might be the hardest place to play in football. If you're going to crush them for that, you're going to crush 95% of the teams in the league, because that is what the league is right now. We saw it again Monday night. San Francisco 49ers, everyone's darling. They go out and lay a massive egg against a bad Minnesota Vikings team, have now lost 2 bad football teams. Well, the Browns aren't bad, but they're not great. They've lost to 2 teams below their station. When the 49ers do it against inferior teams, they get a pass. The Dolphins do it against really, really good teams that were a drive away from the Super Bowl last year. The end of the world is here. So and again, sorry to take up all this airspace, but here's what they should do, Matthew. They should go full wrestling heel, right? They're never going to win over the Stephen A. Smiths of the world. It's just not going to happen. Embrace it. Yeah. Be the villain. Do it. Us against the world, backs against the wall, all that stuff, because this team is nice. It's a nice team. Very good people. Mike McDaniel is one of the most accessible coaches in football. A locker room is made up of a lot of people that are really, really kind and good human beings. Maybe they're too nice. Go full mean. Do it. Be the villain. Go up in the top rope and talk trash to the crowd, because either way, you're going to get unfair coverage. And it's happened to Tua Tagovailoa for years now, happened to the Miami Dolphins, certainly this year. Embrace it. Be the villain.
Yeah, and they're certainly going to have a national stage to do that now that they're going to be on the Hard Knocks in season. So they could really, I mean, if they want to do it, they can go full heel and do so in a way that a lot of teams don't get a chance to, right? Because they're going to be in the spotlight now every week, starting in probably November, and the date hasn't been announced yet.
Yep.
And to your point too, there's something to be said about beating the teams you're supposed to beat. And everyone's going to kill the Dolphins for this. But the 49ers lost to the Browns and Vikings. The Bills lost to the Jets and Patriots. Ravens, 5-2, they lost to the Colts. They should beat them. Bengals lost to the Titans. Eagles lost to the Jets. Cowboys lost to the Cardinals. These are examples of good teams that lost games that they were favored in and should not have lost. The Dolphins have not lost a game they're favored in. And they won one they were underdogs when they beat the Chargers week 1. There's something to be said about that. You think about March Madness, right? They always talk about, your good wins, but also your bad losses. The Dolphins don't have a bad loss. But somehow that gets over, we kill them for not beating the teams that they're underdogs for. They're supposed to lose. The book said they would lose. And these are both road games against very, very good teams or bad matchups. The Bills, I don't know if they're a very good team or they're just for years. They're historically, the way they're built, it's a bad matchup for the Dolphins. That's just what it is. The Eagles are a great team. Perhaps the best team in the NFL, right? After the 49ers fell last night to the Vikings. So it's unfair that, those teams seem to get a pass. The Cowboys didn't. When they lost to the Cardinals, they got, beat up a little bit. But there's something to be said for winning the games you're supposed to win. And if they do that this year, the rest of the year, they're going to be at 11 wins without beating any good teams. And you're in the playoffs. You win a couple of those against good teams, which would be the Chiefs, the Cowboys, the Ravens, and the Bills again. You steal 2 of those or 1 of those, and you're talking about division winning, 12, 13 wins. So I understand it, and I expect the reaction to be the way it is nationally, but it's certainly not fair. And they should never apologize for beating the teams on their schedule that they're supposed to beat. Because you know what? Even the best teams in the league can't do that.
And not only are they beating the teams they're supposed to beat, but they're crushing them. And that's the thing, is that the reason I was kind of bearish on the Eagles going into week 7 is because even their wins weren't super impressive, right? This week 7 was by far their most impressive win. By far. They played their best game. And you know what? To your point, the Dolphins played perhaps their worst game. They probably played worse in Buffalo, but they played one of their worst games. They committed 10 turnovers. Committed. I'm doing air quotes for those
penalties. Not turnovers.
Turnovers? Yeah.
You said turnovers. That would be a record.
That would be a record. They committed 10 penalties. I'm doing air quotes. And they threw a pick at the end zone. They couldn't run the ball. Their offensive line was in trouble. They gave up how many tush pushes on the last drive? Or that
there were 2
Yep.
4th and 1s.
Yeah, but it couldn't stop the 4th and 1. They were outgained by 111 yards, I think.
Yep.
And yet they should have won the game, or they should at the very least have had the ball with a chance to win it on the last drive, because we talked about this off air. Jalen Waddle doesn't run the wrong route on that interception. Darius Slay isn't there in position to make, it might not be a catch, might not be a touchdown. It still wasn't a great throw, but they would have had the ball at the plus 24 with still a chance to tie the game early in the 4th quarter. I also think that the defense wore down a bit. I think that 13-play, 83-yard drive, when you know that a team is going to have 4 downs to get a first down, if they're determined to do it, they're going to use all four downs. It's really hard to stop them, particularly when they have an unstoppable short yardage play like the Eagles do. So I think they wore down a bit. But the defense, by and large, played pretty good, man. They had a pick 6. They had their first turnover in 220 snaps. The pass rush that travels, that did well. They just played a quarterback that really, really good at breaking contain and extending plays. And what was it? That deep they had a long throw to AJ where Hurts broke contain. Yep. They should have had a sack, and he had a couple of scrambles. Things that you're not going to see against Mac Jones. Okay, I mean, you're just not going to see that kind of game. So the defense, I think, played good. To your point, they have a couple of DBs coming back. I was far more disappointed with their performance against the Bills, and that was because the defense just couldn't get a stop. Here, they went with half their roster, down 3 offensive linemen against the best defensive front, arguably the best defensive front in all of football. And again, they had the ball with a chance to tie in the fourth quarter. That's all you can ask on that stage. Certainly, you want to start winning those games, and to win a championship, you're going to have to win those games. But the idea that this was some Dolphins exposed, they're manhandled. Manhandled. They averaged 0.9 of a yard more per carry than the Eagles in that game. I think the net yards per play, the Eagles may have been up 0.1.
Yeah, it was 5.2 to 5.1 yards per play. So
same number of sacks. I think the Eagles had one more quarterback hit than the Dolphins. This was not manhandling. It was just the Dolphins made a bunch of dumb mistakes, and let's just call out the elephant in the room. The officials were wearing Kelly Green.
Yeah, for sure. And despite all that, like you said, even after the bad interception, the Dolphins on that next possession against any other team get off the field because they had 2 third downs, deep in their own territory there, in the Eagles territory. So most teams don't go for those 4th and 1s. So it's unfortunate that, they have an unstoppable play for the Dolphins, but they, against any other team, get the ball back again with about 8 minutes to go, trailing by a touchdown, and who knows what happens. So certainly the narrative that they got blown out and that it's just not real. But like you said, people are seeing what they want to see right now. And those that were doubting the Dolphins to begin with have their ammo. And it's fine. I think as a Dolphin fan, you can't argue it too much because you can see their point. To a certain extent, you can see their point. They have not beaten anybody. But these are certainly not blowouts. The Bills game, I said this to you before, that one stung more than the Eagles one. I come out of the Eagles game feeling better about the team than I did after that disaster in Buffalo.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And I think they're going to play well, certainly this week against the Patriots. And I think they're going to play well against the Chiefs in Germany. The question is, and I think this is a very important question, how well can they play when they just keep taking body blow after body blow when it comes to injuries? Now, the latest, the offensive line, they were down 3 starters, as I mentioned, for the vast majority of the game. I think was it the first drive that Isaiah Wynn got hurt?
Yep, he had 5 plays, and then that was it.
He got stepped on. He hurt his quad. Sounds like it's a not insignificant injury. He's going to miss multiple weeks. So that, to me, is worrisome because their offensive line had been, we talked about at length, a revelation. It had been a big part of their success. And I think we're really seeing how valuable Connor Williams is to this team because I don't think Eichenberg was terrible. He's had worse games than he did against Philadelphia. I know he wasn't certainly far. He was far from perfect, but there is a significant drop off between Connor and Liam. And we can talk about the strategy they had of going into this season with Liam Eichenberg as their backup center. It's a debate we can have. The reality of the situation is unless they make a trade, that's who they're going to have the rest of the season. So they really need Connor Williams to stay healthy.
Yeah, and that creates a problem for 2 positions, right? Because now you have left guard open, and if Connor's back, Liam could conceivably be the left guard, or it could be who we saw on Sunday, which is Lester Cotton. And Adam, he did not play well. It wasn't a disaster. I think I saw him credited with 4 pressures allowed, which is not ideal and drastically different than what we saw from Wynn. So it's quite the drop off there. Wynn was one of the 15 best guards in the NFL, according to various metric sites, kind of heading into this game. So it's a drop off. If Connor comes back, Eichenberg can slide to left guard, perhaps. What do you? So let me ask you this: you saw Lester Cotton play in training camp, day in and day out. He was kind of the secret, right? He was a secret that first team player when you guys couldn't reveal who was lining up where. He was the left guard that was getting first team reps that no one expected. Then they also got Rob Jones back, healthy. We haven't really seen much of him in the regular season. He had a strong preseason, I thought. What do you think internally, before discussing any possible solutions outside of the team, and if they're willing to do that, what are the options internally once Connor Williams comes back to center?
Yeah, I think
does Liam go to left guard?
No, I don't. I think he goes to the bench. I think when Connor Williams, and I would hope he'd be back this week. I mean, he must have had a pretty significant setback whenever that was, week 5, to have to miss the last 2 weeks after coming back from a groin injury. So, but no, I think Connor is the center. Liam goes to the bench, and they'll determine who the start between Lester Cotton and Robert Jones. It sounded like this. We're taping this on Tuesday. We talked to Mike McDaniel yesterday that they're going to roll with Lester, but it sounds like it might kind of be not, if not a rotation, a pretty short leash if things go sideways. They do have a lot of confidence in Robert Jones. Look, Lester Cotton's been around for a minute. Like, I don't know. I didn't know a ton about him before, to be quite frank, this week. But then I had to research him because he's probably going to be their starting left guard. But his body of work is far more extensive than Robert Jones, who, like, he was basically a developmental player for them last year. So my guess is that's who they would go with. But I will say this: the team does believe, in a way that we don't, that they have quality depth in their offensive line. They believe that what they have multiple starters in their mind on the bench. Well, they're no longer on the bench; they're starting because the Dolphins now have three offensive linemen hurt. We're going to see whether or not that philosophy is correct, and I'm fine giving Cotton a shot. But if he doesn't play better, and we talked about this off air, like, does he fit what they're trying to do? Because very, very dynamic offensive line. They had 4 offensive tackles and a center, basically, right? Because Isaiah Wooden played tackles his entire career. Robert Hunt is more than capable of a tackle. They were the guards. Those guys could get to the second and third level, and that's what turned those 6-yard gains into 60-yard gains. And that's really, the phenomenon that was briefly, unfortunately, Devon Achane, was largely because, not totally because Achane's a dynamic player, was largely because they were able to get out in space and block these linebackers and safeties and cornerbacks on the second and third levels. Can Lester Cotton do that? I don't know. We're going to have to find out.
Yeah, and I think the next logical question Dolphin fans are going to ask is there help outside of available to them? We have the trade deadline coming up on Halloween at 4 p.m. Eastern. I think, a couple weeks ago, you would think the defensive line was probably set and they wouldn't need to look to address it. But the injury bug, has hit them hard recently. And now you wonder, is that an area they could look to improve? It's hard because every team needs offensive line, right? Offensive line help. So the teams that have it aren't necessarily looking to give it up. But there could be options available out there. So what do you think? Are they even likely to, or are they comfortable where they are, or are they going to wait and see what happens Sunday and then decide Monday and Tuesday?
I think this is an incredibly important week for them. First of all, they have to get real clarity on how long Wynn's going to miss. And I mean, if they think he's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks, I don't know. This is just speculative. But if it's significant quad injury, those things kind of linger, right? If he thinks, what do you do? Because they've already used up almost all their IR return spots, right? So are you going to IR return him? Or do you carry him on your roster for a month, unavailable to play? That's why, to me, making a trade is almost something that, to your point, we wouldn't even talked about 2-3 weeks ago, but simply because they can't guarantee, assuming, we don't know, again, the nature of Wynn's injury, but if it's going to be a prolonged absence, are you willing to play with 52 guys for a month or so until he comes back? I mean, is that what you're going to do? Or do you just IR him and trade for someone who could help? I mean, certainly they have enough cap space to make a move like that. And the offensive linemen we're talking about here available for trade, they're not exactly the 93 Dallas Cowboys, right? I mean, this is like, there's a reason that the Dolphins can afford them and these players are open to being moved. Some names, our colleague Dallas Robinson was kind enough. He is totally our, like, who might get traded for whom dude here at PFN. He is fantastic when it comes to speculation and trades. He gave some, and I'm just going to read the note he said. I said, hey, what's out there for offensive linemen for the Dolphins? Not a ton of great options was his response, but guys I think will be available: Will Hernandez and Dennis Daly from the Cardinals, Lucas Patrick from the Bears, Greg Van Roten of the Las Vegas Raiders, perhaps Quinn Miners of the Broncos, Daniel Brunskill and Dylan Radins of the Titans, Mark Glowinski of the New York Giants, I'm not going to read the commentary he said about Glowinski, but he's going to cost a lot of money and he's not super good. He said maybe John Runyon Jr. becomes available. The Packers lose another game. Other possibilities: Cody Whitehair or the Bears. Question is, should the Dolphins not have traded Dan Feeney? I mean, that, hindsight's 2020 at this point. But the name he really kept coming back to, Daniel Brunskill, and he's with the Titans. And the reason he thinks he would be a good fit for Mike McDaniel is because we have evidence he would be a good fit for Mike McDaniel. He was the Niners guard. I think you mentioned on their Super Bowl year. Is that correct?
Yeah, from 2019 to 2021, he was with McDaniel and the Niners. He was the starting right guard for the Super Bowl team. He started 40 games across right tackle, right guard, and center, so all on the right side, while Mike McDaniel was in San Francisco.
Yeah. So, and his contract's not bad. I think he's only owed like $500,000 the rest of the season. The Titans aren't good, right? I mean, if you're looking for a team that could kind of soft blow it up, maybe Tennessee does. Do they think about dealing Derrick Henry? I think if they, I have to even look at the schedule. Not sure if they're on a bye. Everyone's playing this week, right? There's no buys this week,
Correct.
So they will play. If the Titans fall to 2-5, maybe that really entices them to pull the pin and just totally start over on that team. But yeah, I do think that there are options out there for the Dolphins. Some make more sense than others. It really depends on how confident they are Wynn's going to be back soon, how confident they are that the left side's going to hold up, that Teron Armstead will be back soon. A lot of information they have that we don't. But certainly I would be concerned about going a month and a half with Lester Cotton, Robert Jones, or Liam Eichenberg as their starter at left guard.
Yeah, and I'd be remiss to point out, I mean, the Eagles hit Tua 6 times officially, I believe is what was in the game book. Do you start to get concerned? These start piling up, when they're playing behind these, this backup offensive line, at least on the left side. How concerned do you start getting then for his availability for the rest of the season if he keeps taking these hits? Now, the Eagles front is very good, as you noted, so this might not be a week in and week out thing, but it's a concern because they have, the Patriots defense is not a bad defense. The Chiefs can get after the quarterback. I think after the bye, they come back with the Raiders. That's Max Crosby. So there is concern there. I think you have to, as an outsider, I don't know how they feel about these guys, internally, the backups, but it's a concern because you have to protect your best investment, which is Tua. And, taking a shot at one of these cheap guys who wouldn't cost, the trade compensation, you're talking about a late round pick or even a pick swap for some of these. It's worth considering if things go sideways on Sunday for sure.
Yeah, and this team is in desperate need of the bye. I mean, I think that's more than anything. They really, really could use their bye. It's every team deals with injuries, and it seems like the Dolphins have worse luck than others. But sometimes you can deal with injuries. You can't deal with injuries to everybody. And that's kind of what they have right now. And again, entirely possible we see both Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard this week against the Patriots. The first time we would see that ever, right? That's what they built. That's what they had in mind. A superhuman recovery for Jalen Ramsey to even be in this position right now, to play before Halloween, which is a real possibility. But Javon Holland, he's in concussion protocol. You might not play this week. Defensive front's relatively healthy, particularly because David Long seems to be okay. But offensive line and running back have just gotten crushed. And this is a running team. So, and this is not to impugn Tua. I think he is one of the 5 to 10 best quarterbacks, maybe players in the National Football League. He is a real talent. And I think we saw last week, he made some throws that should have been touchdowns that were dropped, Tyreek Hill. But he made some throws under duress that made something out of nothing. So it's not like the idea that he's just some system quarterback. Let's throw that in the trash can. That's if you're still making that argument, October 24th, 2023, you're either disingenuous or uninformed, right? It's just not the truth. But he's not. There's a reason that there's all these doubters. He's not going to be like Josh Allen and Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes and be able to, pure God-given ability alone to overcome some of these deficiencies. You want to be able to run the football. We saw how constipated that offense looked on Sunday when they couldn't run the football. It's really important. Well, it's really important to have good blocking to run the football. And so I will say this: they're not going to not try if they feel like it's a problem, because this team has done everything, including trading for Chase Claypool, who was, you know, God bless him, he was a blocker on Sunday, right? In the few snaps that he got. Um, if they had real concerns, and again, to me, they've earned some trust. And Mike McDaniel has earned some trust. He is not going to put his franchise quarterback at risk. He is not going to jeopardize this high-powered offense because of stubbornness, right? I mean, that's the thing, is that they have all the information. We have some concerns. We'll see if their concerns manifest themselves into action.
Yeah, and when you were going through your injury list too, you left that receiver, and I just wanted to the Jalen Waddle thing was interesting because he left with the back. He ended up coming back in, and then on Monday, McDaniel said something about they found a solution. Um, I've been trying to figure out what that means, what this could be. But I mean, how concerned should you be about Waddle's availability moving forward if he takes another, big hit or even steps wrong? I mean, I've had a back issue before. Until it's fully cleared up, just a wrong step it makes it flare up, and then it makes it hard to move, do anything. So
Again,
hopefully, is this solution a miracle solution? It should be.
Yeah. Again, this team needs to buy, right? If you had 2 weeks to heal, he'd be fine when he comes back. So I don't know a ton about. It seems like back spasms, right? I mean, that's kind of the sense that we're getting. I don't know a ton about that. Never had them. Don't certainly back injuries are debilitating. But I will say this: he came back and played pretty good. Like he wasn't. He may have lost a step. He might not have been quite as quick, but he was still making tough catches, even when he came back from that injury. So I do think he is. We've gone a long time and kind of danced around it. For them to be elite, he needs to be elite. Can we agree on that? Like
Yep.
for this offense to beat the best teams, it can't be the Tyreek show. And it's been almost exclusively in the passing game, at least. Certainly the running back has been fantastic, but it's been really overwhelmingly the Tyreek show. And I'm not bringing this up just because I have the over total for Jalen Waddle in the season, which he is far.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite plays during our betting preview pod.
Yeah, far short of the standard. But he certainly has financial incentive to get it together. He needs to be an impactful guy. He needs to have a game where he goes for 6 for 170 and 2 touchdowns. I think he does that, and all of a sudden, this offense is almost unstoppable.
Yeah, and how about getting something out of Cedric Wilson too? I mean, he gives the Dolphins something they don't have on the outside, which is size.
Mm-hmm.
And that big third down pass there, that Tua made to him, it just, it was high and outside, and I feel like that's a missing element to this offense in the red zone too. I wonder, they brought in Chase Claypool, but then he didn't really see many snaps. But you just think they need that big body on the outside, not a tight end. And I wonder, Cedric Wilson's been getting a little more involved recently, which is intriguing because I think we were all underwhelmed, disappointed with him last year. But the talent's there. You saw what he did previously, with the Cowboys. So he can produce. So as he gets more opportunities, that would be a welcome development if he becomes a legitimate, consistent weapon in certain formations.
Him getting the nod over Robbie Chosen was telling. I think Chosen was a healthy scratch, right? He didn't.
Yep.
I don't think he had an injury going into the game. So that was significant. And to your point, they paid this guy a lot of money, Cedric, over the last 2 years to do very, very little. I think it was very wise of them to find a way to keep him. And yeah, he has only earned more playing time. And I will say this for McDaniel, he is one to reward productivity. I think Achane was absolute proof of that. He had that really big, exciting debut. I mean, certainly week 2, he played 6 snaps or whatever, but week 3, when he really played, it was dynamic. And he had one of the best 3-game stretches from a rookie Dolphins running back ever in the 3 games that he was available and played a lot. So I do think Sed will probably fall under that same bucket. but I'm not taking him off the field for a healthy Jalen Waddle. I'm not. I think you
Right.
absolutely need to get Waddle involved. You need to get him, touches any ways you can. And I think they're slowly getting there. One last thing, because we do probably want to talk a little bit about the Patriots game, but one last thing about the Eagles game. Do you think it was schematic or execution issues for the Dolphins against that Eagles defense? Because I think Tua's longest completion was 29 yards. If they're living in that world, it's going to be hard for them to score points.
Yeah, no, it felt like execution because it felt like the pressure was getting to him a lot quicker. And then you had, I mean, it's only one example. I didn't go back and watch all 22, but the interception with the route combo, someone ran the wrong route there, or something went wrong, but you shouldn't have those two receivers there. So it feels like more execution than anything, which doesn't make me necessarily concerned that moving forward about the offense beyond just being able to protect up front and open up holes, fix the O-line. I don't really have other new concerns after this game about the offense.
Yeah, my guess is, and this is just a guess, certainly I think Tua made a lot of big league throws. The rating service which cannot be named at Pro Football Network made him, I believe, either their highest or second highest rated player of the week in the 80s for them on a scale of 100. That's really, really good. And it shows that his numbers weren't reflective of how his performance was. But I also think the Eagles, I mean, they didn't do anything totally novel. They did, my guess is, a lot of things that the Patriots did and just did it better, right? They were able to get after the quarterback more with the front four. I don't remember a ton of exotic blitzes. Do you?
No.
Yeah.
They just it felt like they got bullied. That's what
Yeah.
it felt like.
Well,
And that
which
was
is
always the concern because that's kind of what the Dolphins don't do well with, right? Is these physical teams that just want to bully you. And the Bills are an example of that as well.
Yeah. I mean, again, Lester Cotton and Liam Eichenberg holding the middle of your offensive line afloat is
Less than ideal.
Not a world you want to live in, certainly. But what the Dolphins were able to do against the Patriots played a lot of that soft shell to keep everything in front of them, is they didn't have the dumb mistakes, right? You don't have dumb mistakes. You're able to run the ball very well in that game. I think that was the Mostert game. You're able to run the ball, get completions, keep the chains moving, and they still only scored 24 points. But I think that was the difference. One last thing, I promise it's going to be the last thing, but I want to ask you one more because I want to hear your rant, your thoughts on the officiating of that game.
You don't lose because of the officials.
I disagree. I don't know if they lost that game because of the officials, but you can absolutely lose because of the officials.
Okay. You can. I think, yeah, there were missed calls. The face mask pass interference thing, I think, is one that you need to just kind of get over because they scored on that pick six, on like the next play. And some people are saying, oh, well, they could have scored a touchdown, they could have got there, scored a touchdown and still had the pick six, but circumstances. The same play call might not have happened from the Eagles and things of that nature where I don't think they have the opportunity to do that. Let's say the flag is thrown or Tyreek doesn't drop the touchdown before that, right? And they get their 7 that way. Who's to say that the same exact play call is going to happen and the Dolphins are going to call the same play call on defense and that same turn of, the series of events is going to unfold. So I don't think you'd be like, oh, well, there are 7 points they missed out on. I think that evened out. Yeah, there were some missed ones. People were complaining about the hold on Tua's touchdown pass that got called back, but that was absolutely a hold and he had to because Tua was going to get killed. So it's a good thing he did. He might have gotten the ball off, but he was going to get absolutely, splattered there. So I don't think that's why they lost. Yeah, certainly. I mean, the Eagles having no penalties, and we all saw there was a cajillion of them posted on social media that got missed. It's certainly a concern for just the legitimacy of the league. And if I was a bettor on this game, I would have been unhappy. I didn't not have any money on it, but the NFL, we saw all this weekend, the NFL has got to get the officiating fixed because there's too much money riding on these games and too many missed calls that this has to be improved. But I don't think it's an excuse for the Dolphins. So please, the Dolphin fans, to stop with that. That's what I would say.
I don't think it's an excuse. I think it's a reason. And I think that there were a number, it wasn't just bad calls. Every game has bad calls, right? It was bad calls at the worst possible time and what it led to. The phantom roughing the passer on Christian Wilkins. It was going to be 3rd and long there, and the Eagles were going to have to convert that to even get a field goal attempt, right?
Yep.
Instead, they got 1st and 10. I think they were at the 30-yard line or whatever after that, and they go and score a touchdown. To me, that was at least a 4, maybe a 7-point play. That was a significant play in the
Can't push the quarterback though. He could have held up. He just wanted to push him. You can't do that. That wasn't like he was coming so fast and couldn't stop. To his credit, he didn't, follow through in a shove. So you can see why maybe it shouldn't have been called, but I get why it was. You
but
can't
it was
do
like
that.
it was like a half step though, Matt.
If it was reversed, someone did it to Tua, what would Dolphin fans be saying?
I think I think Dolphins fans would have been bitter, and I think everybody else would have been like, "Nah, it's not pass interference." I think a neutral observer looks at that and says that is not in the spirit of pass interference. It's not at all. And these penalties are so penal. I kind of disagree with you on the face mask Cedric Wilson situation. You can't guarantee a pick six, but I do think that there's something to be said about punching that in on offense, getting that consistency, getting that confidence, getting that rhythm. Certainly, too, his numbers look a lot different there. If he throws a touchdown in that situation and all that. But I think they would have had it would have had a different feel because defense after they're Jerome Baker running, a pick six back and full maximum effort. Boom, they're right back on the field again. I think the Eagles went the length of the field and scored a touchdown there. Maybe the tenor of the game is different. Still, the points might be the same, but just how the game unfolds. And I think that's my broader point. That's how the a lot of these penalties were. Do I think that Raheem Mostert got interfered with on that interception? Yeah, but also he had 2 dudes in front of him for the interception, right? It's not like, one-on-one coverage and he got mugged and it was a pick because of that. Yeah. No, it was a badly underthrown ball, right?
Yeah. That's a 50-50 call. I think sometimes you might see that called, you might not, and I get why it wasn't. Obviously, Mike McDaniel thought it should have been based on his subtle message yesterday during the press conference, but yeah, it's different if the person committing the penalty is also the one that intercepts it.
Right.
And if it wasn't underthrown. Because if it's not underthrown, then, it comes back to the whole, do they have a right to go for the ball and all of that. I was torn on it, but I get why that one wasn't called. But I think you would see 50% of the time it get called.
Yeah, I think David Long getting headlocked.
That's a bad one.
Yeah, a missed hold that was an impactful play and an impactful part of the game. 10-0. You can certainly the Dolphins did not play infinitely worse of a game when it comes to penalties than the Eagles. That the Eagles got very, very lucky. They didn't have at least 5 or 6 penalties called against them. But the point I was going to make is sometimes you get unlucky at really bad times. And I don't think there's some grand conspiracy, the Dolphins fans going through the CSI of the official and saying that he got suspended 19 years ago, whatever it was. Okay. From the greater Philadelphia area, if the NFL really thought the guy was on the take, we would hear about it by now. Okay. It's sometimes just bad bleep happens at really unfortunate times. But it's not like the Dolphins haven't been a very, very penalized team throughout the course of the last 2 years anyway. And even if 3 or 4 of them were bogus, you still have more penalties than you should. And first play of the game, get the snap off on time, for God's sake.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to believe in the long run, a lot of these things even out. Not so much from the fact that, the Dolphins are a heavily penalized team, but just from calls that are missed. I don't go back and pay attention to ones that may have been missed that benefited the Dolphins as well in other games. So I tend to think of the long run, it will even out. It's more of a systemic issue as well. Like you said, it's not a conspiracy. It's just officiating is bad in the NFL. It has been for years now, and they need to find a way to improve that. for the integrity of the game and for all the people that have money on it. And there's a lot riding on it beyond just the people on the field nowadays. So the NFL needs to do something about that and keep that in mind.
Could you have ever imagined a time that we'd go 40 minutes into a podcast, Patriots week, and not bring up the New England Patriots?
Hey, that's right. Bill Belichick's never beaten a Tua Tagovailoa-led team. So, I mean, the Patriots it's funny. It's a weird world that they are now, the afterthought in the AFC East. And it's even with the Zach Wilson Jets, right? Even with them, you're still more concerned about them than the Patriots right now.
I will say this, and we're going to wrap this in a sec, but I will say this. They better not lose on Sunday. Like, if they lose on Sunday, they're going to lose to the Chiefs. If they lose on Sunday, it's going to be 5-4 going to the bye. And all that good work is like, here we go all over again. We win 5 straight, we lose 5 straight. This team is slumping. They got to go and take care of business. If they go and take care of business against, even with, that was a great game they played, although Bill Belichick owns the Bills. Let's not kid ourselves. I mean, that's, it's like the Bills own the Dolphins. Bill Belichick owns the Bills. Playing at home, best game of Mac Jones's career. A lot of those things that we saw aren't sustainable, and I think that's why Vegas has Dolphins as a 10-point, last time I checked, favorite. But they better not lose, man, because if they lose, all of that hard work, if they lose, they're going to be in a dogfight, certainly to win division, and I think even also to make the playoffs.
Yeah, no, certainly. The AFC has some teams that I didn't think would be in contention that are sitting there with only 2 losses. That the wild card battle in the AFC is going to be brutal, and you don't want to fall into that mix when really there's no need for them to. Like we just talked about, they beat the teams they're supposed to, so they need to go and do it again. It's at home. Even with Tom Brady, the Patriots always, had some fits in Miami. That's just a thing. And there's no reason it should be any different this week. And like you said, if it is though, if the wheels come off, it's and then all of a sudden the Hard Knock show becomes it takes a different kind of spin if they lose these next 2 games.
Yeah, for Pro Football Network's sake, let's hope they're relevant throughout the entire course of the regular season, because we see dramatic spikes in interest when the Dolphins are good. It would be good business for us. Certainly, it'd be good for Dolphins fans. It would be good for the Miami Dolphins as a franchise to go and beat the pants off a team. And a coach, by the way, who's going to try to stick around as long as he can to break Don Shula's record. And every time the Dolphins beat them, it makes them one more game away from having to do so.
Yeah, totally. And I think it was right after the game, there was a quote from the locker room from an undisclosed Dolphins player that said the next team's going to feel it. It's good to see that they're mad about this loss. I think it would stun me if this game is even close to being with it. And I've been one to say, Dolphins by a touchdown, right? That's been my popular pick for a lot of their games, this year. I think this is a double-digit win. I would lay the points. I think they're going to take this opportunity to kind of, I wouldn't say get right, because it's, they had one game that was, like we talked about, they could have won. So it's not necessarily a get right game kind of game, but I think they're going to take out some frustrations. And I think the Dolphins are going to be a double-digit win and head to Germany, kind of feeling good about themselves.
I mean, certainly, I guess NFL Network, is that what that Dolphins-Chiefs game will appear on?
It is. Yep.
It's so hard to keep track because there's so
No, this is an NFL Network one, not a ESPN Plus or an Amazon Prime or anything like that. This is right on NFL Network.
Could be we certainly had Jaguars-Bills this year, but could be the best international game ever. If both those teams are at the top of their game, get some health back, certainly on the Dolphins side, get some mojo back on offense, it could be absolutely a criminally shame that it's not a primetime game, that half the country is still going to be asleep when that game gets to halftime.
Set your alarms. You don't want to miss it.
Huge in Seattle, getting up bright and early to watch a game played 10,000 miles away.
I bet you people in Hawaii are going to be up, or maybe haven't gone to bed. Who knows?
I've been to Hawaii twice, and once was during the British Open. That was weird, man. Like literally, I'd be on the treadmill at 7:30 in the morning. It'd be getting dark on my
Yeah,
television.
that's
It's really, really weird when you're in that part of the country and there's sporting events so far away. But that, friends, is your geography lesson of today. Anything else, Matthew? You want to wrap?
no. I want to wrap. I just want to point out, even after this bad offensive performance where they scored 10 points, right, on 8 possessions, the offense, the Dolphins are still the only team averaging over 3 points per possession in the NFL right now. That number for a season has only been hit 3 times since 2000. The 2020 Packers, the 2018 Chiefs, and the 07 Patriots are the only teams ever to average over 3 points per possession for a season. So the Dolphins are still on pace for a historic offense, even with a disappointing game in Philadelphia. And another reason why I think they're going to, explode. I think if they don't get 30 against the Patriots, and the Patriots defense is good, but I think they're getting 30 is kind of my bar here. I kind of a 30-17 kind of game here, and they'll be feeling good going to Germany. That's what I think.
I have never seen this
no
chest pumping confidence out of Matthew Infante when it comes to the Miami Dolphins. I'm over here in a flop sweat thinking, oh my God, the wheels might come off if they lose on Sunday. And you're like, oh no, they're going to stomp these guys.
No, they got this one. I'm not worried. Tune in early. The fireworks are going to start early, I hope. And they're just going to go from there. That would be my expectation.
I'll be there.
If we come back here next week and that didn't happen, one, I'll be angry, and Adam, you can certainly, come after me for that.
Hey, look,
I deserve
it. I'm the one who's out there saying you guys are idiots for calling them frauds. If they frauded up on Sunday, I'm gonna have to eat an entire freaking cage of crow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Adam, I like to remind everyone, all of your work on the Dolphins is at profootballnetwork.com/Miami-Dolphins. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, please do. Okay. Come on, please. And if you're watching on YouTube, you might as well subscribe there as well. Hit the like button. That helps. And we will see you back here next week on the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins Podcast.